There's a new extended ending for My Hero Academia. There is a bunch of lore drops that came with the Ultra Age book. We found out the actual original quirk that Shigaraki had before it was stolen by All For One. We got the top 5 heroes at the end of the series, like who is the top 5, and a bunch of other miscellaneous things. There's a lot to cover today, so let's just get right into the first part, which is this new extended ending for My Hero Academia. This is not something I expected. It is honestly, it comes out of left field, and I appreciate it greatly, because I feel like it's a culmination of just what really was good about My Hero Academia, and kind of seeing the growth and journey of some characters, mainly Eri, because she was a very important character in the overhaul arc, and basically her innocence was taken away. She was thrusted in an environment that was just absolutely awful, and obviously the entire cast of characters wanted to make her life a lot better. And even though she was never the main central front focus of the story, she did have some relevancy throughout the story up to the very end. And this little short story that came out, which has been kind of summarized here, thankful for the translation, basically it reveals more or less what she's doing and how the end of the story is right now in the My Hero Academia verse, and potentially maybe some hints at a part 2 of My Hero Academia. Now, if that happens, it's left to be seen, but obviously with all the additional lore drop that we got with this, new book that released, it's pretty fascinating. It definitely could open the door for a lot of different things. So let's get into this Eri stuff first. So the My Hero Academia Ultra Age has an epilogue with teenager Eri visiting Aizawa, President Mike, and All Might in the facility room at UA. As a pro hero with his armor, Deku is now ranked number 4, so he's in the top 5 heroes now. So for those that do know or want to get up to speed here to be, have some clarification, at the end of My Hero Academia's manga, we found out that, Deku got his entire armor suit, basically becoming like a, a new Iron Might, so to speak, but Iron Deku. He has a bunch of different abilities that were clearly based off of One For All and all that, and because of him being able to now fight in the front lines, he has quickly managed to make it into the top 5 heroes. That's impressive. It really is. For a man that's basically without a quirk, it just shows his dedication, but also just how much technology within the My Hero Academia verse has evolved since the beginning of the story. Here's a short summary of the manga story, and it's very touching. Eri visits Aizawa and Mike in the facility room at school. She brings them some gifts to eat. Aizawa says she's grown up, and Eri says it's thanks to Shino and Koda. She then greets All Might as well. All Might's still alive, by the way. Crazy, man. This man is still trucking, even after all the damage he's taken. Aizawa tells her that Deku isn't in today, as he's off doing some hero work. Eri says she's wishing she could see him. Eri invited him to come see her music debut and laments that he would probably only be able to see it from the top of the buildings. So, to give some context here, I find it very sweet, by the way, that it implies that Deku is still a teacher here, that even though he is a hero, he is still teaching at school, still, actually mentoring people. That's nice. That's a nice little detail. It showcases that he has a double life. He's doing hero work, but also teaching. I like how he just didn't give up the teaching role, that it wasn't like his only option at the time, and now he has hero work, he's just given up everything else. No, he's doing both, so that's really nice. The TV in the faculty room broadcasts a news report of pro hero rankings. The newscaster talks about Deku and how he was the best hero who helped save so many people, but lost his quirk. However, with the help of his armor, he is able to take to the skies again as a pro hero. Deku shoots up to hero ranking number 4, and Bakugo becomes hero number 5. Interesting to see that Bakugo legitimately did not beat Deku. That's crazy. You also see Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki in their hero costumes jumping across buildings, and Bakugo and Deku banter on. Eri, Aizawa, Mike, and All Might watch on in admiration. The last panel is Eri looking at Deku on the TV and saying, "I have to do my best to..." The end. And I'm assuming this is an illustration that comes with it. Basically, teenager, Eri, her pretty much playing the guitar. This is very sweet because it's like the whole story came full circle here, by the way. For those that don't understand the reference, if you remember, after the Overhaul arc, there was a segment with, like, for instance, Gentle Criminal, and you know how Deku had to stall him for the entire concert and stuff didn't get really messed with. There was this whole arc where they basically sang in front of the entire school to uplift everybody's vibes, so to speak. And Eri was a part of it, and it really enlightened her and made her very happy. It was one of the first times that she was probably smiling full force with really no evil really holding her back. It was a really symbolic moment for her character, and the fact that she is playing an instrument here at the end showcases the impact UA had on her and what Deku had on her and everyone had on her when they played the music for her. It's very beautiful. I like this. This is a very sweet conclusion, and I honestly can't wait to get my hands on this book as well for this epilogue to be able to actually read it for myself, because this is super cute, because it gives a lot of little lore drops. It goes to show, you know, basically who's still around, who's not still around, how the heroes are doing, how society's doing, and everything that the characters were set up to try to save this girl has done very well. Like, they have done a good job at it. But obviously, that's not the only thing that we got from this. Besides this extended little epilogue, we also got a bunch of different lore drops. One big particular one is the origin, or the original quirk that Tenko, or Shigaraki, had at birth, which gives just so much closure and just so much more significance to the relationship between All For One and Shigaraki, but also just why Shigaraki was like he was. And it makes the story more engaging, but it also makes me sad because I wish this content was in the original story of My Hero Academia, so let's talk about this one next. So, I think everybody knows my personal feelings on how I felt about Shigaraki at the end of the story of My Hero Academia. I have a lot of mixed feelings, and I've went on record to say that I don't hate My Hero Academia, I don't hate the ending, I'm lukewarm with it, and I've actually, as time has went on, I've warmed up to the ending quite a bit, especially with these additions to the epilogue and different information that's come out. But Shigaraki as a character was one character that really made me upset with how he was handled. I didn't hate his conclusion, for instance, how he was killed. I hated how he lost a lot of his agency thanks to the merging of All For One within him. And I didn't really like that, because it felt like, more or less, the character that we were growing with and was built up since the very beginning alongside, you know, parallel to Izuku was pretty much tossed in the garbage bin. He was still somewhat there, but more or less his personality was dumbed down to be a little bit more like All For One, and I wasn't a big fan of that. I wasn't. I mean, there was really cool fights and stuff, don't get me wrong, but I wish he had his own mind and he wasn't fully getting manipulated basically by All For One. But obviously it turned into that. And I wish we would have had a scene, which obviously this is just fanfic at this time. You know, as much as I want to cry about it, nothing's going to change that, but I talked about it a lot years ago. I always wanted to see Shigaraki pretty much, like, do some form of, like, Sith type stuff and get rid of All For One, because it was very apparent that, you know, Hoirkoshi, he was a big fan of Star Wars. He's revealed this for a long time. He is a massive fan. He's done a lot of illustrations for it. And it would have been very cool to see, for instance, Shigaraki surpass his master, kill his master. Even if he got All For One, it would have been nice for him to get rid of All For One, the OG All For One, and become his own man. It would have kind of followed that, like, you know, little nod to Siths and Star Wars that, you know, Hoirkoshi likes, but also it would allow Shigaraki to become his own man. He would no longer be manipulated behind the scenes, puppet strings, anything like that. It would have just been really nice. I feel like that would have been really cool to get rid of All For One and really just focus on Shigaraki and, you know, him finding out a little bit more about the truth of what actually happened to him, which gets into this reveal. So, Tenko, or, you know, basically Shigaraki, his original quirk was this flying circle that All For One was using in his fight against All Might. This is actually brutal. The fact that this quirk was revealed in this fight, in the finale fight, but it wasn't elaborated that it was Shigaraki's, is nasty work. Actual nasty freaking work. I do wonder at one point when Hoirkoshi was writing this, if he wanted to add an encounter with Shigaraki with his younger, like, you know, with a younger All For One, and he was going to reveal this quirk. I wonder if that was an intentional plan at one point. Like, when Hoirkoshi was writing this, because you gotta remember, when he was sitting down at his desk writing these manga chapters, he's a weekly author. And so, a lot of times when they're writing their chapters, they don't really know how fully the series is going to end. They might have a rough idea, but they're kind of writing the next chapter by their coattails, so to speak. That's often how it is. And I wonder, when this point happened, if he was intentionally setting up a reveal for that. But obviously, thanks to rushing and probably other meddling with editors or whatever happened behind the scenes, Horikoshi wasn't able to do that, and so this is more or less a plot thread that was just dropped to lead to the conclusion of the story. Whatever the case may be, it makes me very sad because this could have added so many more layers to Shigaraki's character to add more depth. Like, it was very apparent that his quirk was, like, changed. Like, I think this is a very active theory and stuff for years. People believed that All for One stole Shigaraki's quirk. People believe that, myself included. And with this reveal pretty much saying, yes, his quirk was stolen, it makes everything fall into place like perfect blocks. Because this explains Shigaraki's sudden activation of his destruction quirk, why he destroyed his whole family, but also it explains the itching that he constantly had throughout the story. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, the reason why Shigaraki was itching so bad was because his body did not like the quirk. His body wasn't adapting to the quirk. It didn't want that quirk, but it was itching because it wasn't his OG quirk. It was supposed to be this quirk to allow him to fly, which makes sense when you think about his grandmother being able to float. So it's just, this makes me sad for a variety of reasons, because this showcases that there was clearly something going on within the final arc that Horikoshi wanted to do, but he just wasn't able to do it. I feel like we'll never probably get that answer on why, unless Horikoshi himself really wants to talk on length about it, because, I mean, the only way he would probably ever do that is if he just doesn't want to work with Shonen Jump anymore, but I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think he wants to burn bridges, so I don't think he's ever going to be outspoken about maybe it was rush problems, maybe editor problems, I don't know, maybe it was his problem, I have no idea, but regardless, it makes me sad. I wish this reveal would have been fully within the manga. It would have just been so nice to see the overall encounter and Shigaraki finding out the truth of this. That the reason why he actually killed his entire family was actually thanks to All for One. This person he looked up to like a father figure that, yes, he knew was manipulating him, but looked up to kind of like a father figure that came in and saved him, kind of like an All Might situation. It would have been nice to see that, just his reaction to that, but obviously, we didn't get that. With that being said, though, we need to talk about the top 5. So, we found out that the top 5, in terms of who is the top 5 heroes, is Mirio, Shoto, Mount Lady, Deku, and Bakugo. I like this a lot for a variety of reasons. For one, I'm glad to see Deku and Bakugo not at the top, because I felt like, really? Like, yes, there are MCs. Yes, Deku did incredible feats. But to be fair, Deku doesn't have a quirk anymore. He doesn't, okay? He doesn't. And him instantly surpassing heroes that have been honing their quirks for years, decades even, I think would be kind of too soon. I mean, give it another 5 years, I'd say, yeah, Deku being the number 1 makes perfect sense. But at the beginning stages, no. And even Bakugo being there, I don't think he should as well. He took a lot of damage after his fight with All for One, and him dying as well, basically. So him being able to get back on that horse and be near the top, you know, I'm glad he's not. As for Shoto being there, I think it's very fitting to see him in number 2, because it's basically the exact same as what happened to Endeavor. It's basically father like son, and as much as Shoto has constantly tried to push away his father and not interact with his father, or he's accepted his father, he really is his father's son, and take that however you will. It is interesting to see him in second place. Mirio being number 1, very happy. I mean, obviously, he's been a very big discussion within the story of My Hero Academia for a decade now, or actually about 7 years, but he's been talked about a lot. He was, you know, there's been a lot of theories and a lot of discussion about him, like what if he would have gotten, like, you know, One for All instead of Deku. There's a lot of things like that, but I'm glad to see him at number 1, because it thematically and the story beats makes sense that he's there. So I'm glad to see him, you know, living up to his goal, his dream, and being there before anyone else. Amazing. As for Mount Lady, which I've neglected to talk about so far, I'm very proud to see Mount Lady here. Not because I like her as a character, or like just her design-wise, but because Mount Lady, her origin and how she started to where she's at the end of the story showcases so much growth, because she was one of the first heroes that we got introduced to in My Hero Academia. Like, in the first chapter, she was introduced as this character that was all about sex appeal. She was all about basically money and fame and getting noticed by the public. She was just in it for money, basically. And she seemed like one of those very scumbag heroes that just were very vain. But then as the story got more dark and heroes started to exit the hero scene because things were getting really rough, Mount Lady stayed around, and she showed her true colors. She stepped up and became a better person, and I'm glad to see, despite all the issues that she had at the early stages of the story, or how vain she was, or shallow, she became a very better, like a better hero, a better person. And seeing her in top 3 is great. Also, thematically makes a lot of sense with the journey of her character from chapter 1 to the end of the story. Now, with that, we also have little details here, like All Might is now UA's vice principal. We get to see that the USA's #1 hero is called Agate Minnow. I don't really know what's going on there. Apparently, his quirk is called Discrepancy. I wish we would get some clarification on what that actually fully means. We also got some stuff basically about not Shigaraki, but we got, you know, information about the league that they play poker together. Dabi likes cold soba, basically showing he doesn't like anything hot. I mean, Spinner's book was very controversial, but people used it as a way to understand what led to the war. There's little details like that that's just really fascinating. Apparently, there's more stuff coming out here, actually, just 6 minutes ago. The end of an ear, and oh yeah, apparently this was one of his favorite chapters. This was Hoirkoshi-sensei's one of his favorite chapters he wrote. I could be wrong there, maybe don't quote me on that one, but I believe that's what this one means. But yeah, I want to talk about this. A lot of interesting stuff came out. I thought this was fascinating. What was your favorite thing to learn? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you disappointed? Do you think there's going to be a part 2? Let me know in the comments below. But I love you guys. You be safe. You stay healthy. Chibi out.